An umbrella or a softbox? Does it really matter which one you shoot with? When it comes to lighting modifiers, umbrellas and softboxes are two of the main modifiers that photographers use in portrait photography. But is there really a difference between the two? In this video, I want to touch on that. I want to talk about the pros and cons of each one, and then I want to take some shots so that we can visually see the difference between using an umbrella and a softbox. So first, let's talk about the pros of umbrellas. They're cheap, they're portable, they're easy to set up, and they come in a wide variety of sizes. You can get 33, 43. I think you can get all the way up to 7 foot, probably more than that. So there's a huge variety of sizes for umbrellas, and they are just quick to set up, easy to use. But some of the cons of umbrellas is they're cheap. So they're not very durable. They will break on you. But because of the price, they're easy to replace, but they are cheap. They catch in the wind very easily. Those things are practically a sail when you're using them outside. So you really have to make sure that you use a sandbag on your stand, or if possible, use an assistant to make sure it doesn't fall over and break your umbrella, your flash, or fall on your model. Umbrellas generally only provide one layer of diffusion, so they're not going to necessarily provide the softest light, but they are much better to use than just using a bare flash or some of those other little plastic modifiers that you put on your flash. They can be very difficult to control the light. There's a lot of light spill when you use umbrella. It kind of pushes that light into the umbrella and throws it all over the place. So it can be difficult to control the light, but umbrellas are still a great modifier. So let's move on to softboxes. Pros of softboxes: great control of direction of the light. You can really put that light where you want it, and there's minimal to no light spill. So you can really direct that light in the area that you want it, and where you don't want it, it won't be. You can have multiple layers of diffusion. So either in the diffusion panels themselves inside of the softbox, or a lot of softboxes, you'll flash the light into the softbox, and then there's a silver reflective lining, and it bounces off of that and then goes through a diffusion panel and then, out to the subject. So you have that multiple layer of diffusion. And like umbrellas, they come in a wide variety of sizes. You can get square ones, rectangle ones, octagons, hectagons, strip boxes, tons and tons of different softboxes that you can get to fit the needs of whatever it is you're doing in a particular shoot. But some of the cons of softboxes is that they can be expensive. They can be very expensive. You can find some that are reasonably priced, but for the most part, they're not going to be anywhere near as cheap as umbrellas. So they can get pricey, and some can be difficult to set up quickly. Some require you to put the little the poles together and force them in to mold, especially when you're doing like octagons and circles and that sort of thing. So they can be time consuming to set up. So depending upon if you're tearing them down and putting them back up all the time, that can get a little cumbersome. They do have some that are more umbrella style, and those work perfectly fine. So there are a variety, but that's still kind of a con. They're not as easy to set up as umbrellas. Okay, so with that being said, let's jump right in. Let's take some shots, and then let's go back to the computer and let's compare those shots so that we can look at the amount of light that we're putting out and the quality of that light between an umbrella and a softbox, and see if there really is a difference between the two. Now, when I do these shoots, I have a light meter that I'm going to use because I want to make sure that the output and the level of light that's reaching the subject is the same for both modifiers. So that way we're getting a fair amount of light on the subject. So I will have to either adjust the settings or the position of the light to be able to get the same level of output. But I want to try to keep it as even in level as possible. Disclaimer, this is in no way a scientific experiment or example here. Okay, so I do not need to have my head chewed off for that. I'm just trying to give a quick visual representation of the two so that way you can see the differences and you can see if it matters which one you use. So let's jump right in. We're going to start with umbrellas first, then we'll go to softboxes. Okay, so I've got the umbrella set up first. So I have it about 45 degree on camera axis. Got the mannequin here as the subject. So I'm going to take a few shots in this way. I'm going to meter the light first just to see what kind of output we're getting, so that way I can make sure I'm getting the same output on all the other shots. Now, what I'm going to do with the umbrella, and I'm also going to do the same with the softbox, I'm going to do both directions on the umbrella. So I'm going to start doing it shoot through, and then I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to bounce it in. Now, granted, this is a translucent shoot through umbrella, so it's not necessarily meant to bounce the light on the inside and then push it out, but it will still do that. The light output is obviously going to be less, so I'm going to have to make adjustments to the settings and the distance away to make sure that I account for that. But I just want to do both just to see if there's a difference in the direction that you have it. So let's go ahead and meter this first, and let's see what we're working with here. Maybe. All right, so the meter is giving me 3.2, which is exactly where I need to be. I'm shooting at a shutter speed of 200, ISO 100. Got that on 125 there. Let's do that one more time just to make sure that's still good. All right, 3.2. So again, shutter speed 200, and that's just to block out the ambient light. I just want to make sure that all the light is coming from the flash itself. So that's why I'm shooting at 1/200th of a second. ISO 100, aperture f3.2. Let's take a shot. Okay, if we look at that image right there, the light isn't bad. It's relatively soft. There are some shadows. Now, granted, if you wanted to get rid of those shadows or reduce those shadows on the right side of the subject's face, you could just bring in a reflector or another speed light or something like that. So, of course, those shadows are going to be a little bit more dark and harsh than what you may want. But in terms of the light itself, it is relatively soft. There are some hot spots there, so, it definitely could go for being a little softer. But for an umbrella, this would definitely work. If you were taking this portrait, it for sure would work. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the umbrella around and take another shot, and let's see what we get. Okay, so now I have turned the umbrella around. So now the flash is facing into the umbrella, and then it's going to bounce it in and bounce back onto the subject. Now, I did measure the distance from that last shot from the subject to the umbrella because I want to try to keep that distance as close to the same as possible. And I'll adjust flash power and camera settings to keep the exposure the same on the subject. So let's do a quick meter reading and see where we are. Okay, so now I'm getting F2. Okay, so I need to increase my flash power by about a stop or so. Okay, so now we're at 1/16. We're at 1/64th power on that last shot. Okay, so now we're getting F4. So what I'm going to do is just bring that back just a little bit. Boom, f3.2. So let's take that shot and let's see how that looks. Okay, so if you look at that shot, the first thing that you'll notice in comparison to the first shot is that there's more light on the background, which can be expected because we increased the flash power. But also because of the umbrella, now we're shooting into it, it really wraps that light around and pushes it around the subject and ultimately behind the subject. So we are lighting up the wall a little bit more. But when you look at the subject, what you'll notice is that there is a bit of a difference in the shadows on the face. Having the umbrella face this way does slightly reduce those shadows. And that's mainly because of the shape of the umbrella in this direction. It's wrapping that light around the subject. So we are getting some of those shadows filled in more. But if you look at the forehead and the cheek area, there are still some hot spots on the subject. So this light still isn't as soft as it could be. So then that brings forth the question, is softboxes, do they produce softer light than an umbrella? Let's find out. Okay, now I have the softbox set up, and this is a 2-foot by 3-foot softbox. And I'm starting out having the flash facing into the softbox, so it's going to push in and then bounce back out. There's only one diffusion panel on the softbox, so it's essentially only getting 2 layers of diffusion. So let's do a quick meter reading here, make sure that we're on target with where we need to be. f3.2, so I'm still shooting at 200th of a second shutter, ISO 100, still shooting at f3.2. Let's take a shot and let's see how that looks. Okay, so if we compare that shot to the shot with the shoot through umbrella, I think the first thing that you'll notice is that the light on the subject is a lot less specular with the softbox. So what does that mean? It means that the light is softer, which we would expect because we're shooting it through a softbox, and that is the main characteristics of a softbox, is to really soften that light. Now, of course, it does help that there are essentially 2 levels of diffusion here by pushing the flash into the softbox and then it bouncing off of that reflective silver lining and then coming back out and going through the diffusion panel. So we are essentially getting 2 levels of diffusion, where with the umbrella, we really only got 1. Even when we were bouncing it into that umbrella and coming out, it still really was only 1 level of diffusion because there was no diffusion panel on the outside once it bounced into the umbrella. Okay, so the light is softer on the subject here. If we look at the background between this shot and the shot from the first umbrella shot is relatively the same. So there really wasn't a ton of bounce light onto the background when shooting with the shoot through umbrella. Now keep in mind that's going to vary depending upon the space that you're in. So I'm in a space right now that is open and high ceiling, so there's not a whole lot to bounce off, and it's daylight also, so there's not a whole lot for it to bounce off of. But if you're in a smaller space, a much smaller space, you certainly can run into issues with that light spill from the umbrella bouncing off of your walls and ceiling and then affecting the exposure that you're trying to get on your subject. Okay, so now what I've done, I have rotated the flash head inside of the softbox. So now instead of it shooting into the softbox, I have rotated it so it's essentially just shooting through the 1 level of diffusion panel that's on the softbox. So I want to see, obviously I had to reduce the power of the flash because now the flash is aiming directly at the subject, so it was more intense. So I had to reduce the power of the flash. But what I really want to look at is the quality of the light that's going to hit the subject. So let's take a shot and see how that looks. Okay, so if you look at that shot right there and you compare that to the last shot, you can see that that light is very specular. There are hot spots. The shadows are very dark and deep. So we can see that just having that 1 level of diffusion really doesn't do a lot to soften the light. Again, it's a lot better than shooting bare bulb, or it's a lot better than using those plastic diffusers that you can put on the front of the flash head or those domes or whatever. It's better than using that, but we can clearly see here that using that softbox and having at least 2 levels of diffusion really goes a long way in making sure that the light on the subject is soft. So, do I think that there's a difference in using an umbrella or a softbox, or does it matter which one you use? I think the answer absolutely is yes, it does matter. Now again, umbrellas are very cheap and they're very easy to set up. Softboxes can be expensive and they can be more difficult to set up. But in most cases, you're going to get softer light on the subject when using a softbox, when you have at least 2 levels of diffusion. And sometimes you can have more than that. You can have an inner baffle. So you're really getting like 3 levels of diffusion. So if you had to choose which one to use, if you were in a position where you could use a softbox, I personally would recommend using that softbox because that light is softer. Now, depending upon the type of shoot that you're doing and the look that you're going for, if you want more specular highlights, if you want more harsh shadows, then by all means use an umbrella to achieve that, or use no modifier at all. It really depends on the look that you're going for and the shots that you're trying to achieve. But if you're just doing simple portrait photography and you're trying to get the most flattering light on the subject as possible, I do recommend using a softbox if you can. Now, what you want to try to do is make sure that you get a softbox that's relative to the size of what you're shooting. So if you're shooting a headshot, then you want a softbox that is roughly the same size as that. If you're doing a half body or a full body, you're going to need a softbox that's much bigger to be able to get that light to hit all the elements and the parts of your subject based on what you're framing. So since I essentially was just doing a shoulder up headshot here, a 2x3 softbox worked just fine. Also keep in mind, the bigger the softbox that you have, the more power you're going to need to be able to fill that softbox and get that light out there. So if you were doing, let's say a 4 foot by 6 foot softbox or a strip box or something, and you just had a simple speed light, even at full power, you may really struggle to get enough out of the softbox to hit your subject to properly light the subject. So you do have to keep that in mind. Either modifier, whether you're using an umbrella or a softbox, either one will produce a pleasing result depending upon how you use it. So I would always recommend don't shoot bare flash unless you need to. If all you have is an umbrella, by all means, use that umbrella, get it as close to your subject as possible. And, you'll still be able to get really great portraits that have really great lighting with that. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please give me a thumbs up. It just helps to get this video out there to help other people. If you have any questions or comments, definitely put those down in the comment box below. And if you have any suggestions on videos that you want to see me make in the future, please put that down in the comments below and I will try my best to make those videos. So until next time, keep shooting. Take care.